450 hours deep into Arc Raiders, and I'm now at the point where two separate things are happening. First of all, my natural interest for the game is declining as I wait for updates and content to be released, and secondly, the issues the game has are starting to wear me down, whereas 400 hours ago, they were just quirks or things that I had to get used to. I'm very aware about what's happening here as it's happened countless times before. After so much time in a single game, it's the little things like the bugs, the systems you don't quite enjoy, weapon balance, all of it starts to piss you off much more than it did before. But you keep playing anyway. It's an unhealthy relationship that can develop with certain games. I've had it with PUBG, I've had it with Counter-Strike, I've had it with DayZ. It always happens when you put hundreds or even thousands of hours into a game. It is a combination of burnout and frustration, and as I said, I'm well aware of it. But the frustrations have to come from somewhere, and at the moment there's a lot to be frustrated about with Arc Raiders, so I want to talk about my own personal issues with the game, if you'll indulge me.
Seeing through walls and shit? Seeing through walls, bud. Seeing through walls.
Let's start with money. Money is basically useless. Yes, you can buy unlimited ammo, unlimited defibs, and a couple other things that make sense, but barring those examples, the real resources that are going to keep you going raid after raid is what's in your stash. Money doesn't help with all of the things that are actually going to keep you going into raids with an actual kit. My stash is full of guns, but in almost no way can I start digging into my cash stack to compensate for the things that I'm missing, or even buy a good selection of items to boast my runs. I don't expect to be able to buy all the best items, trigger nades included, but not being able to even buy heavy fuse grenades feels like a weird choice. The daily limits really don't help either. Only being able to buy 10 green bandages, 3 blue shields a day, it's stuff like that that really contributes to money feeling less valuable. During my 450 hours, I've only ever felt two ways about my cash stack. I've either just tried to get the number as high as I could because I wasn't using it for anything, or I get frustrated because I can't spend that high number on anything I actually want to. And trust me, I want to. Neither feeling is a healthy one to have towards an extraction shooter's money. I believe that money can serve a much more balanced purpose within Arc Raiders, but as it stands right now, it's lacking ways to spend it. Money's uselessness almost certainly contributes to my next issue with Arc Raiders, free kits. I'll be the first to tell you that free kits are great and incredibly important for the game, such that I don't think the free kits themselves need to be nerfed, but it's clear that they are far too prevalent, and their prevalence is indicative of larger issues the game has. So my argument is that everything outside of the free kits themselves needs to be buffed or changed so that free kits become a less appealing option. You know what would make free kits less appealing? If money could purchase things that actually allowed players to put together a real kit. You know what else would make free kits less appealing? If the expeditions didn't encourage hoarding. Right now, Arc Raiders' expedition system encourages hoarding your most valuable gear and saving up your money, but for an extraction shooter, this design is pretty backwards. In my eyes, an extraction shooter should encourage and reward you for bringing in your best gear, and that risk-reward element you get from bringing in your best gear and potentially losing it just adds to the fun and tension. With free kits being a widely used option, that tension disappears. I believe that the rarity of certain gear should translate to its power level to some degree, giving people a reason to bring out their best gear over running a low-risk free kit, but that idea, I think, was thrown out over at Embark, because Arc Raiders' current weapon balance is the antithesis of this. Weapon balance is already incredibly difficult, but weapon balance in a game designed for everyone, regardless of playstyle and skill level, is an even tougher gig. But my god, the current weapon balance is a joke, no matter how you spin it. If we're talking purely about the philosophy of extraction shooters, then it stands to reason that the best guns in the game for PvP would be the Bobcat, Tempest, Bettina, and Volcano. They're the rarest, most expensive weapons in the game, and yet they all lose or are far less versatile than the Venator and Il Toro. In almost every fight I get into with the Tempest, the Venator would have been better. In almost every scenario with the Bobcat, the Il Toro would have been better. I mean, honestly, enough headshots and the Venator beats literally every gun in the game, and it's not even close. A single blue gun outclassing every other gun in the game for this long is just ridiculous. There's almost no point in me bringing in my purple guns because they are worse than the Venator. I want to run out of my purple guns. I want to use them, but they lose to the Venator every time, and that's just absurd. Of course, I haven't mentioned the legendaries, but my understanding is that their purpose is for dealing with Arc, but if you've ever used a legendary, you know how underwhelming they feel. For Embark, I assume their intent with weapon balance is that every gun should be reasonably viable depending on circumstance and rarity. This gives every player the best chance and keeps the sweats and casuals closer, which isn't a bad thing, but my god, they are failing at this if this is their intent. The final large thing I think really needs to change is the game's approach to events and arc spawns. I despise how the current event rotation works, and I also despise a couple of the events on offer. I don't believe that events should have a set rotation. If you're going to run, say, some special holiday events, then yeah, you can have them appear more often, but the default events should be more dynamic. I barely get a chance to play certain events because of the times they're on, and that just seems ridiculous. And this is something that people have been asking to change for so long, so they better have something cooking. Not to mention, some of the events are just really lackluster. Of course, depending on what type of player you are, you'll favor certain events, but if you've ever done the Spaceport Launch Tower loot event, you'll know that the loot at the top of the towers is not at all worth it. The only reason to go into that event is purely for the PvP fun. I've also heard that Hidden Bunker is underwhelming from people that have done it. Events like Husk Graveyard and Prospecting Probes don't feel worthy of taking up an entire map's event rotation and should probably just be like complimentary condition on top of a Night Raid or a Cold Snap or something like that. It all just feels very weird to me. Arc spawns also need much more dynamism in my mind. I'm talking about giving them new spawn locations, put them in areas they haven't been before, bring over the shredders from Stellar Montes to other maps, just mix it up and make it more dynamic so that every raid I go into, the Arc are an unpredictable threat rather than a predictable annoyance. They could spawn a fucking Bastion outside the reinforced reception, but compensate by removing the Bombardier from the car park, and that makes the whole map more dynamic. You don't need more Arc, they just need to be able to appear in different spots and in different varieties. Like imagine instead of there always being a Bastion in Loading Bay on Stellar, they replaced it every other raid with like 10 shredders down there, making the floor of Loading Bay just a death sentence if you fell down. There is so much room for change in just this one area that I think they'd be making a mistake not to allocate dev time to making the Arc more dynamic. There are many other issues with Arc Raiders that piss me off every time I load up the game, but those are the main ones. I wouldn't have put this much time into this game if I didn't think it was incredible, but we're at a point where, as a live service game, things have to change. As always, it's much easier to talk about the things you dislike in video games rather than what you love about them, but it all comes from passion and a genuine desire to see the games that we love succeed, and Arc Raiders is one such case. This game is awesome, but it's a bit too rough around the edges for the long term right now. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you later.